Right, welcome back. You know I love a good brain teaser, and this deep dive, it is packed with them. We're going deep into the world of estrogen and its effect on how we navigate.
Yeah.
You sent over that fascinating 2024 paper from Psychopharmacology.
Yes.
And I can already tell this is going to challenge some assumptions.
It's definitely a thought-provoking study. You know, we often hear about men being naturally better at spatial tasks, like reading maps, navigating new places. But this research throws a bit of a curveball by investigating the role of estrogen, a hormone we usually associate with female biology.
Right. So we're talking about challenging that old men are better at maps stereotype.
Exactly.
Tell me more about how the researchers designed this study.
So they wanted to isolate the direct impact of estrogen on navigation, separate from any inherent differences between male and female brains. So they brought in both men and women and gave some of them estrogen while others received a placebo. Then they put them through a series of virtual navigation tasks.
So they're trying to pinpoint if a surge of estrogen actually changes how we navigate, regardless of whether you're male or female.
Yeah.
Clever. What kind of virtual challenges did they put them through?
3, actually, each designed to mimic different aspects of navigation. The first was a simple why maze, a classic test to see if someone tends to navigate using landmarks in the environment, that's called allocentria thinking, or by relating to their own position, that's egocentric.
So thinking the landmark is north of me versus the landmark is to my right. Got it. Did estrogen make a difference in how people tackled the why maze?
Surprisingly, not really. Men showed a slight tendency towards that landmark-based or allocentric strategy, while women leaned a bit more toward the egocentric, self-referencing approach, but estrogen itself didn't significantly change these preferences in either direction.
Interesting. So maybe estrogen's impact isn't so straightforward. What happened with the next challenge?
For the second task, things got more complex. Imagine a virtual arena, kind of like an open field in a video game, scattered with objects.
Oh, okay.
The participants had to learn the location of these objects using only distant cues for reference, making it a true test of their spatial memory and allocentric navigation skills.
So this one sounds like it really put those landmark-based navigation skills to the test. How did the participants fare?
This is where we start to see some intriguing differences emerge. Men were faster and more accurate at remembering the object locations. Plus, they moved more directly through the arena, suggesting greater confidence in their spatial understanding.
Sounds like what we might expect if those men are better at maps. Stereotypes hold any weight.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's more to the story.
Absolutely. This is where the results get really fascinating, especially regarding the women who received estrogen.
Okay, now you've got me on the edge of my seat. What happened with the women and estrogen?
While men seemed to perform well under the influence of estrogen, the women actually became slower and less efficient at this arena task over time. This contradicts some findings from animal studies where estrogen seemed to improve spatial skills in males.
Now that is a genuine head-scratcher. Why would estrogen seemingly have opposite effects on men and women in this task? What's the takeaway here?
It suggests that estrogen might not work in a simple, better or worse way when it comes to spatial skills. Instead, it might be influencing the specific cognitive strategies each sex uses for navigation, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, there's another layer to this puzzle.
Another layer. You're killing me with the suspense.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and then you can fill us in on this new twist when we come back. All right, we're back. Before the break, we were grappling with that unexpected finding that estrogen seemed to boost men's performance in that virtual arena while making things trickier for women.
Right.
What's the explanation for this puzzling contrast?
It's all about nuance. You see, the researchers also tracked the men's testosterone levels throughout the study.
Okay.
They found that those who received estrogen actually experienced a dip in testosterone.
So it's not just about estrogen working its magic in isolation. We've got multiple hormones potentially interacting here. Didn't you mention earlier that testosterone is linked to spatial skills too?
Exactly. While estrogen was the star of the show in this study, we can't ignore the potential role of testosterone, especially given this unexpected interaction. It could be that the estrogen-induced reduction in testosterone played a role in the results we're seeing. It adds a fascinating layer of complexity.
Okay, so this estrogen-testosterone dynamic is a whole other avenue to explore. But before we get lost in the hormonal weeds, let's get back to the study itself. You mentioned there was a third navigation task, one designed to be more like navigating in the real world.
Absolutely. They called this one the town task. Participants were taken on a virtual taxi ride through a simulated town, complete with streets, landmarks, and intersections. Their job was to memorize the route and the landmarks along the way.
Ah, so it's like trying to learn your way around a new city, relying on both landmarks and your sense of direction. How do they test whether they actually learned the route?
After the virtual taxi ride, they had to retrace the route on their own, making decisions at each intersection. And just like in the previous tasks, the researchers were looking for any differences between the estrogen and placebo groups and between men and women.
Okay, so it's the final challenge who came out on top in this navigational obstacle course. Did the estrogen give anyone a clear advantage in the town task?
Similar to the arena task, men were more accurate at pointing towards landmarks after learning the route. It suggests they might have developed a slightly stronger grasp of those spatial relationships.
All right, so the men maintained their slight edge in this more real-world scenario. But I'm really curious about the women who received estrogen. Did they continue to struggle in this more complex task?
This is where it gets interesting again. They were consistently slower at this pointing task, even compared to the women who received the placebo.
So despite being in a more familiar, real-world-like setting, the estrogen still seemed to have a potentially disadvantageous effect on the women's navigation performance in this case.
That's what the data suggests, yes. And it further challenges this idea that estrogen's effects on navigation are simple or straightforward. There's clearly a lot more going on here, and it might have to do with how estrogen interacts differently with the male and female brains.
Okay, so we're seeing these really intriguing patterns, but what's the takeaway for our listener? How can we make sense of these seemingly contradictory findings?
Instead of thinking of spatial skills as simply men are better or women are worse, this research suggests that estrogen might actually be promoting greater cognitive flexibility in both sexes.
Hold on, you're saying estrogen could be making our brains more adaptable, but in this study, it sometimes led to worse performance. How does that add up?
That's the beauty of the brain. It's never as simple as it seems. It's not about making one sex's brain universally more flexible. It's about the fact that male and female brains have inherent differences in structure and wiring, and estrogen interacts with these pre-existing differences in unique ways.
So estrogen is like a brain tuner, but the starting point for that tuning is different for men and women, and that tuning might not always lead to improvements in every single task.
Precisely. It's about finding the right tuning for the specific task at hand. This research suggests that your brain, as the listener, might be more adaptable than you realize, and hormones like estrogen could be playing a role in that adaptability. But remember, this study was conducted in a virtual environment. What happens when we step out into the real world? That's the million-dollar question.
All right, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. How does this research translate to real-world navigation with all its complexities and chaos? We'll dive into that right after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back. I have to admit, I'm finding it really intriguing how these seemingly subtle hormonal shifts can impact something like navigation, which feels so automatic.
It really highlights the intricate connection between our brains and bodies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And as you pointed out before the break, this study focused on virtual navigation.
So naturally, the question becomes, how does this translate to navigating in the real world with all its complexities?
Right. Because, let's face it, we're not dodging virtual obstacles in our daily lives. It's more like navigating a crowded grocery store or finding our way in a new city.
Exactly. Real-world navigation involves so many more variables and layers of sensory input. Think about the hustle and bustle of a city street, traffic, pedestrians, unexpected detours, even the weather. All of these factors could interact with the effects of estrogen in ways we haven't even begun to explore.
So while this research gives us a fascinating glimpse into how estrogen might be impacting our navigation, it's not as simple as saying estrogen equals X when it comes to real-world scenarios.
Precisely. It's more like estrogen is one instrument in a whole orchestra of factors that influence how we navigate. And this study provides a really important starting point for investigating these complex interactions further.
Makes you wonder what other everyday activities might be subtly influenced by these hormonal fluctuations, right? It's like this hidden layer of complexity we rarely consider.
Absolutely. And I think this study underscores the importance of studying both sexes and considering hormonal influences in research. It's not just about acknowledging differences between men and women, but understanding how those differences might shape our experiences and abilities in really subtle ways.
It's a good reminder that even seemingly straightforward tasks like navigating to the coffee shop down the street involve a fascinating interplay of biology, environment, and experience.
Well said. And who knows, maybe as we continue to unravel these complexities, we'll gain even deeper insights into how our brains work and how we can optimize our cognitive abilities.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive.
Mm.
It seems like with every answer we uncover, we're met with even more intriguing questions.
That's the beauty of scientific inquiry. It keeps us curious, engaged, and constantly seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Couldn't agree more. A huge thank you to our expert for walking us through this captivating research, and to you, our listener, for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your mind open to the endless possibilities of the human brain.